So GGG has proven that they're going to be keeping Path of Exile 2 up to date pretty frequently, given that only 5 days after the release of the early access, they've already come out with a pretty significant patch. And of course, as usual, with patches come controversy, but I want the specific controversy brought from this patch to be the topic of today's video. In their analysis of the current patch, they decided that there are a few builds that are outside of the norm as far as player power goes, and they wanted to bring those back in this current patch 0.1.0D. Now, what these changes are specifically isn't really important here in this discussion. What I wanted to focus on are the player feedbacks regarding these changes and what we can expect as a player base going forward and how we need to adapt, etc. So the first feedback is that these changes are happening mid-league. Of course, people are invested into their character. They're looking into different builds that they want to choose, some gameplay that they are feeling that they are led toward, and then comes the investment of time and currency and passive skill points, etc. into this build, only to have that build be taken away completely and having to pivot out of it. The second point that these players are bringing regarding these nerfs is that it's now too costly for them to change out of these builds and into one that's not completely nerfed. Of course, the game is in early access. They feel like it's a time for experimenting. They want to be able to try a build and not have the fear of that being taken away from them given a patch because GGG decided that its player power is too high given their expectations for the game. Now, I think the negative feedback coming from these players is justified in a way. Nobody wants their build taken away from them, and they don't want to feel like they have to start a completely new character in order to play the game if a build that they're playing is completely obliterated and they don't have the currency to change to a different one with that current character. But let's be very clear about something. It's very important for the health of the game that GGG brings in nerfs to builds that are extremely outside of the norm of where they want gameplay to be. Or else we'll end up with something like Diablo 4, where there's one build that's doing literally trillions of damage, and the devs don't have the spine to make the changes that are needed in order to bring a little bit of balance so that those that are interested in different builds don't feel like they're completely idiotic for choosing a different build that isn't the top build of the patch, right? There's been some feedback suggesting that respeccing should be completely free, given that we're in early access. Now's the time for experimentation, and being punished to try different things seems counterintuitive. But given GGG's history with respeccing and their philosophy, I don't think that's going to be a possibility. Now, the next step up to that, toward the middle ground, would be then to only be given respec points if your build has been affected directly. And I don't really know how they would make that work, knowing which exact build got nerfed, which characters need to be given that respec, etc. I don't think it's worth the time to go into that. I think the middle ground here that we have to accept as players is that the current cost of respeccing be brought down to a little bit more reasonable cost in order for us to change build if something has been nerfed to the ground. So what do you think? Should GGG be sticking to their guns in order to keep in line with their game philosophy on how characters are supposed to be designed and their player level and eventually the penalty that it takes to change from one build to another? Or do you believe that respeccing should be completely free? We are, after all, in an early access stage, and experimenting with different builds is pretty much the purpose of this, so that we can bring balance then back into the game once it is in full release. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm sure GGG will take all these feedbacks into consideration and keep with their philosophy at the end of the day. I think it's important for them to keep in line with this game philosophy that they do have and have been sticking with for the past, I don't even know how many years they've been developing for, but They've obviously made an amazing game. We want to see it continue growing, and we want to be a part of this experiment. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.